All right, that was just a small break, but we left off with Cloud Strife, Tony. So I need to know why Cloud Strife, if we haven't heard it yet already in the last 45 episodes.
Well, I'll. He's closer to the top, but since that was the one you guessed, I'll do. So
Yeah, sorry, just got to go out of order.
it's hard to be specific because you're still, you haven't played Remake yet, and you want to play the other ones, and you don't.
I've been playing it, bro.
Yeah, the new trilogy is kind of predicated on knowing what knowing the overall story. Are you sure? I don't want to. No, I'm not going to ruin that for you.
Say it without ruining it.
Okay, I'm really, because like Cloud, I'm somebody who, has like at my core, I am, a very sensitive person who, feels insecure about stuff and is just, like not necessarily the most like tough guy. I'm not like a typical manly man, but I mask that by being sometimes, like a very serious, very stoic and I'm, a Cloud's whole story, even like throughout the whole compilation of just like, learning how to be himself and
I love him as a character.
Learning how to rely on other people and, face his past and all of that, it's just really inspiring. Lately, I've been really thinking about the version from Advent Children, which is the movie from like 2005 that takes place after the original game, and it's basically technically takes place after this novel that takes place after the original game. In that he's just so broken, and he's just he's like trying to find the will to fight, the strength to protect what matters, and just seeing like his journey, like he's finally himself, he's just learning how to forgive himself for certain things, just always look forward, so that's, I've said it 100 times on this podcast, but Cloud, like I think of him when I feel like I can't do something, and then I'm like, well, I mean, Cloud did it, so that means I can do it too.
I really like that answer because honestly, Cloud is a great character. It's one of the reasons that I am enjoying 7 Remake so much. Great choice. I noticed a lot of ours are from video games, and I love this. Is one very good thing about video games is you play as you're in the shoes. You're in their shoes. You're not just watching on a screen. You're controlling it. So
and plus they have the benefit of being longer. So you spend way more time with any characters.
Oh, I'm gonna spend like hundreds of hours with Cloud by the end of it.
I'll spend the rest of my life with Cloud.
Character I've spent hundreds of hours with, Nathan Drake.
That's a great choice. He almost made my list, but he's not quite there, but he's reasonably close.
What did it for me was Uncharted 3. Here's why. It's the first time we see the real Nathan Drake, and we find out that his last name isn't even Drake. That's a persona that he put on as a coping mechanism. So we get to see his backstory, and I think it's cool to see his character really progress in 3 and then especially 4. But between 3 and 4, this is where this character, especially 3, became such a huge, influence, inspiration, because it doesn't matter how dire the situation. And if you play Uncharted, you see that they are in some dire situations. But it doesn't matter how dire the situation is. He always tries to play it cool and to have a sarcastic, just joking attitude towards it, to play it off and to get the job done without, crumbling under the pressure or the circumstances. And I love that about him. I love his humor, all of that. He's, I'm an absolute clown at work, and a lot of my responses to people is just stuff that Nathan Drake would say to people. And that's just because of the character that he is. And of course, Nolan North, huge. Nolan North is awesome. Nathan Drake is just a reflection of Nolan North in a way, and I love Nolan North. So That's a reasoning for Nathan Drake, and you can tell Tony. I know you can tell. You can see it.
I definitely see it. I think what made me, because I played the first game, I'm like, Nathan's, he's just like your typical fun, action, lighthearted guy. Cool, whatever. I don't care. But then one of my favorite moments in any game is in Uncharted 2 when he runs into Elena, and then like Chloe could tell, that he's like sad, and he's like, no, she didn't break my heart. No, what do you get out of here? And that that was the moment, because like it starts off as being about, like a typical heist thing that he does, and then that moment happened, and I was like, no, this is what this game's gonna be about, and that's really cool. And then like how he breaks when he thinks that she's about to die. Nolan North's performance was like really heartfelt, and I was like, dang, I didn't know he could do that. And then Uncharted 4, everything with his character.
Everything with 4.
Neil Druckmann was the creative director, and I mean, you could tell because it has that touch. Nathan Drake's a pretty solid character, in my opinion.
It's just huge. Yeah.
All right, my next pick, which is, I'm just going to start from 5 and then do up to the first one, because I did the second one with Cloud Strife, is an obscure one. Like, I wanted to, I didn't do it if it didn't feel natural, but it helps that one of my picks is genuinely from a series that it's popular, but not with a widespread audience, if that makes sense. Like, it has its fans, but beside that, nobody knows what the heck this is. It's Kaido Momota from Danganronpa V3.
Okay.
So, if you're listening to this and you played the game, then you know that because of the nature of the twist that you're probably never going to play them. So they find out that they are,
but I'm not. Yeah.
That they are kind of characters in a show that just happens to be like with real people. So the stuff happens, but their personalities are maybe possibly fake. It's kind of ambiguous, but that doesn't matter, because they're still, even like if we know a character's fake, it doesn't matter. So it touches on that. But this freaking guy, he's just like, and I do want to quickly say that I've heard the localization to English kind of changes his character, because in the original Japanese, he's apparently kind of a not great person, but I've only played it in English and I don't know Japanese. So there's that. He's just, even in the face of all this chaos, the story of all these games, a cast of, teenagers, school students trapped in a location, and they have to kill one another if they, and get away with it if they want to be able to leave. So obviously that creates great tension right off the bat, a lot of twists and turns, and the story gets really stupid, but I love it. But he's just always like positive, like always putting on the brave face, always, just encouraging everybody. I love his relationship with the main character, Shuichi, who I really related to, so it was like, when like Kaido was encouraging him and he felt hopeless, it actually made me think of, Kaido reminded me of my late brother in some ways, how, he just had that like larger than life personality and was like, I got this, man. I got this. I'm going to take care of this problem. I'm not fazed by nothing, even though he is, but he's not going to show it. And so it was like, like having him still with me, and, I just really grew to love this character, and he would just always like put a smile on my face. Like he's one of those guys that's endearing to an almost annoying level. Like other characters are even like, dude, why are you so positive? Like, are you not paying attention to the circumstances? But like, he never cared about that, and then you find out his, backstory and what happens with him. And then there's a moment where they make you think he died, and I was just stunned. And then even in his execution, because he does die, it's inspiring because it happens on his terms. It's not so like even in his death, he was still spitting in the face of any powers that would try and bring him down and bring down those he cared about. And,
I have a pick like that.
He still died a free man, a independent thinker, a trailblazer, and he was really one of the people that encourages, the main character and everyone else to press onward and find a way through this madness. So, I not a super popular character necessarily, but like even now, like I think about him sometimes, and if I'm like having some doubts or something, I like imagine what he would say to me, and he'd be like, "You got this, man." And we all need people like that in our lives. So I freaking love Kaido.
That's a great pick. Mine is going to shock you in a weird way. Ready?
Yes.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
I could kind of understand that.
But specifically from Sonic X. If you've ever watched Sonic X.
I know what it is. I've never seen it. Okay. Is that the show from like the early 2000s or the from new one on Netflix?
No, it's the one from the early 2000s.
Okay.
It is amazing. It's worth it to just go watch it. It's such a good iteration of these characters. It's just perfect. And Sonic in this is, imagine Nathan Drake, but on, a million times a million. Because obviously it's Sonic. But he's the same way as Nathan Drake, but he wants to protect his family, his people. He has such a I don't care mentality towards everything. But it's because like he just thinks he's so capable that he has it under control. So because he knows, he's so confident and he knows that he has it under control, he can be a type of like security to everybody around him. So I'm thinking about the kid that's also in the series. His name's Chris. He's just a human, so he's always kind of like scared by what's going on because, obviously Dr. Robotnik, all these, Eggman, all these crazy things. But Sonic is just kind of like, it'll be all right, I got it under control. And he always does. The only thing I would say is also Shadow the Hedgehog. I love him. I think his character's perfect, but just the iteration of Sonic and Sonic X, it's so worth it just to watch it. I think you would actually really enjoy it because of the characters.
I saw it, like, the Nostalgia Critic did, like, a video about, like, Sonic animated things or something, and, like, he talked about that, and I remember thinking that it looked cool. Like,
it's worth it. It's really good.
Like, it looks, like, mature and gritty, but still, like, aimed at children, which intrigues me, like, as to like the quality of the storytelling and everything.
Yeah, there's also an iteration of it where like in it where Sonic basically becomes evil. He basically like Sonic gets the symbiote. It's essentially what happens. So he has that kind of arc in it. It's just so good. Him clashing with Knuckles. Everything you see today, imagine that show did it, but better. So it's like the Spectacular Spider-Man of the Sonic universe. You just gotta. It's hard to explain. You gotta watch to know. The best comparison I can really think of is Nathan Drake. So, and it's funny because a lot of my picks have the same type of humor and sensibility towards them.
All right, my next pick is Kingdom Hearts character. Is anybody surprised? Now there are no shortage of characters in this franchise that inspire me.
I was gonna guess one, but I didn't know which one.
Whose stories I resonate with, but I think. Actually, you know what? I'm debating if I want to pick another one. This is all live editing right now happening. No, yeah. I'm gonna say Aqua from Kingdom Hearts. Just barely edges out some of the other characters I relate to for one reason. If you know the franchise, you know that she falls into the realm of darkness because she's rescued to save Terra, her friend, another character I really resonate with. After he gets possessed by the villain Xehanort, this probably sounds like a bunch of gibberish to you, Caleb. But it doesn't make it makes slightly more sense if you actually play the games. But so she was trapped in this realm of darkness, essentially outside of time, to save one of her, because she was saving one of her friends, and she, sent him to safety and was stuck there. And then, I'm picking her over any of the others for the reason that, in between, I'd say, like, I don't know when it comes out in the chronology, but like sometime before Kingdom Hearts 3, they released like a short game, like it's maybe like 3 hours or something like that, called A Fragmentary Passage. And you play as Aqua in the Realm of Darkness, and she's just, it's basically like an A24 movie in the Kingdom Hearts universe.
Yeah,
like, you know, like
interesting.
you're like walking through these locations, you know, fighting enemies and stuff. And then, you know, like she has like her internal monologue about, you know, how she feels and stuff. And, you know, she's like trying to find her friends, Terra and Ventus. And then, you know, just like being able to spend time with this character like this, you know, that you've gotten to know in a previous game. And like, you know, just like seeing her struggles, you know, seeing her fight her shadow self essentially and just wander through these like labyrinths. And, you know, it was a really unique experience. And then in 3, you know, when she gets rescued by Sora, that was when she was at her lowest point. And then, you know, I just, you know, because I kind of see it as a metaphor for like being depressed or something, you know, and that's what she deals with. But like, I'd say like the only other character who matches her in terms of like strength and resolve is probably Terra, because like his will, he gets taken over by the main villain, but his mind persisted and literally became its own entity, like a separate character, you know, because that's how strong his will was. But I love, you know, Aqua's story, you know, how she was just stuck in darkness for so long, and she never stopped thinking about saving the one she cared about. I can't say she never lost hope, but she would always find it again. And then everything worked out for her, and she finally made it out with help from other people. And that's kind of poetic, because it's like she was always like that big guardian figure to people, but then somebody saved her, and, you know, she becomes part of a team. So, you know, her story it's probably just right now where I'm at in my life, because it flip-flops sometimes depending on how I'm feeling. But right now I'd say Aqua, because, you know, she gives me, you know, like it's kind of like that verse in Psalms, you know, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, you know.
I'm getting those vibes. I'm reading about her, and that's also amazing that Willa Holland voices her. That's super cool.
Yeah, I like her performance a lot. You know, it's like really understated, and like there's a lot of subtle emotions and stuff. But yeah, I mean, Aqua, I mean, I can't really say anything else, but you know, she gives me the hope that, you know, as they say in The Last of Us, if you're lost in darkness, always look for the light.
That's all. It's interesting, bro. I'm reading about it now. In the latter, she encounters her friend Mickey Mouse. I love it.
Yeah, I can't stand him. But
reading from the wiki. Okay, now to explain some things. My next pick is Anakin Skywalker.
Huh.
Here's why I picked him over Luke.
I was gonna pick him, but he's not necessarily a role model. Well, he can be, I guess.
So
from a certain point of view.
From a certain point of view. As I get older, it changes. So like, you know, growing up, I'd say, you know, till I was, you know, 16, 17, Return of the Jedi was my favorite movie, and Luke was my favorite character. And then I really, really started to appreciate Episode 3 and Anakin, and looking at him as a tragic character, like as an inspiration of essentially what not to do, is kind of what I'm getting at. Luke was super fun character. He should be in my honorable mentions, but you know, one of the greatest heroes in all of fiction. But then Anakin, he is a character throughout fiction that you can learn so much from.
Yeah,
like you're explaining with, you know, some of your picks. I mean, I can't sit here and go through his whole character arc, but you know, it's almost like we have a retrospective series about that. So go watch those. But anyways, seeing his development from a child slave to having the freedom, but then also being confined to the Jedi Order, to also then having you know, a relationship that goes against that, to then her dying, which causes him to go off the deep end to do anything to save her, which causes him to go to the dark side, him going to the dark side, and then his son bringing him back, and then him destroying the Emperor, and then himself and the Empire with him in one final act. And then Ahsoka. Ahsoka just took him from being, okay, there's Luke and then there's Anakin, but then after Ahsoka, it's like, okay, there's Anakin. He is absolutely amazing. Seeing him truly just be Anakin and then finish his training with Ahsoka. He is the mentor. He is one of the greatest mentors that you want. He is like, imagine if Obi-Wan and Vader switched places in the originals. That is the Anakin that we got in Ahsoka. A lot of people reference Yoda and Obi-Wan as some of the greatest teachers, and obviously Mr. Miyagi. But what about their pupils? What about Danny LaRusso that took what they taught them and then also was able to overcome their own struggles? That's what I think of Anakin, because Anakin learned from Yoda, from Obi-Wan, and then got redeemed by his son to come back, destroy the Sith, and then to finish his training, finish his role as master by teaching everything that he could, pass on everything that he knew to Ahsoka. It is a beautiful story from episode 1 all the way to episode 6, and then Ahsoka. It's his character is a tragic character, and it's something that you can look at as kind of what not to do, but also how to come back from it in a way.
I mean, when you look at it in part, he's, like he didn't, like if he would have been able to be open with, his like mentors and stuff about what he was feeling and stuff, all of that could have been avoided, but they specifically said that you couldn't do that. So, you look at it, like, it's not like, obviously he had a lot to blame for who he turned into and all the evil things he did, obviously. But I mean, in my opinion, all evil people start as victims. Like, even, like you look at like people in history who have committed like atrocious crimes against humanity. They probably didn't come out of their mother's womb, just set on that path.
Yeah.
Like some stuff happened that screwed up their minds, screwed up their emotional process.
It's usually in their upbringing that it happens. And it's so interesting when you take Luke Skywalker, who really had it kind of all made for him, even though he was on Tatooine. He wasn't a slave, and he was a moisture farmer, and that was a lucrative business in Tatooine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He just wanted more. But on the opposite side of that, Anakin was a child slave who wanted more because of the dire and the upbringing he had, being, if you watch episode 1, everything that he had to go through and see. So, but he just wanted away from it. So really his mom was like, you just take him. He needs to be, you get him away from this. He doesn't need to be a slave anymore. So it's interesting. And that upbringing has something to do with the characters they become. But his is a story of he didn't die on Mustafar. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He, as Obi-Wan thought he did. He didn't. And then Luke brought him back, and then he died a hero.
Yeah. All right, my next, I contemplated having a Star Wars character in my top, but I think it's partially because my relationship with Star Wars right now is like kind of a abusive lover. Like it's a franchise I care about, but every time I feel like I'm warming up to it again, it just backhands me. And like,
so true.
A lot of
Ahsoka.
I could pick a few characters in the sequel trilogy, but we know where that goes, and it kind of ruins their stories. So it's like I want to take their whole story, not just certain pieces of it. So,
I know who you're gonna say.
Yeah,
Kylo Ren.
No, it's not a Star Wars character. Actually, I don't have one.
So real quick, why not put Kylo or Rey on your list? I feel like that would be a good pick for you.
I think it has to do with how their stories ended and how I'm not. It just kind of ruins my view. Yeah, unfortunately.
I got you. But
so my next pick is from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because I haven't really read any comics with this character in it, so I can't speak about that. But as far as the MCU, probably the one I relate to the most, actually, it kind of was Thor, and then we don't talk about that. I'm Rocket Raccoon from the
Okay.
Guardians of
Okay.
the Galaxy trilogy. I love Rocket because I feel like I'm kind of a nihilist sometimes. I mean, but I think to an extent we all are. Like, we've all had moments where, like we're, experiencing some hardships or whatever, and we just wonder, like, why was I even born? Like, what is the purpose for my existence? I could have just as easily have not won that, been the cell to fertilize the egg in my mother's womb and be born into this hellscape that we call planet Earth. That didn't have to happen. Why did that happen? But I love Rocket's story because that's how he starts out. When you meet him in the first one, he's just like this jaded guy who, he doesn't like anyone except Groot, you know.
He has so much trauma.
He's done, he just commits crimes, Anytime
That's
like
such a good
somebody
take.
calls him like a rodent or something, he's ready to kill him because and then there's that scene in the first movie when he's drunk at the bar and he's like, "Do you think I wanted to be made? Do you think I wanted to be, ripped apart and put back together over and over and over again?" And that was like really like the only moment he cracks, aside from that scene at the end where Drax like pets him and then like he's like shocked, but then he lets it happen. And then in the second movie, dude, like his whole journey of like, realizing, my God, I'm kind of a dick. And the only reason I'm like that, as as Yondu says, like in a moment of wisdom and kind of trying to teach the next generation, is like, you're just like me, bro, because you have a void in your heart, and you know that love will fill that void. But what's the one thing you constantly reject? Love. And then he ends, the movie, like realizing that his family does still care about him, even though, he's not the greatest person sometimes. And then, even in Infinity War, when, he has that moment where he's there for Thor, I like where he's like,
That's a good moment.
okay,
Yeah.
it's time to be the captain. Like we all have moments like I've had moments like that this year, especially, but it's that moment where you essentially learn you have to grow up. Like
Whoever wrote that part,
yeah,
fantastic.
like you have to take on a bigger responsibility. You have to grow. You can't stay the same stature forever. As your body grows, your mind and emotions have to grow too. And then that it all comes to a head in the third movie. Where he spends most of the movie in a coma. And then he has that moment where
Movie's so good.
he's like thinking about his backstory, which is heartbreaking, and then that moment where he's close to the afterlife. He's talking to Lila, but then she tells him, it's not your time yet. Like, and then he goes back to the lab and saves the other captive raccoons. So he's like saving people from having to experience the stuff he did. And then I love that this is part of his character arc, is that he finally realizes, I am a raccoon. Wow. And then he starts calling himself that. So he has this beautiful arc about, where he started out not wanting to acknowledge who he is. And then he comes back, does a total 180 or 360, whatever, and is like, this is who I am. It's part of me now. I accept it. I embrace it. I'm not going to let it ruin my life anymore. And then now he's leading the Guardians of the Galaxy, dude. Like, it made me emotional in the theater. That was a lot of that movie did, but his story was really the thing that, just spoke to me.
It was perfect.
Spoke to me right there at that moment. So, I think about Rocket Raccoon as like, that expression, like, if I can do it, then so can you. Like if he can become somebody who, is there for other people and, is is a leader and stuff, then I mean, anybody can, because, chances are you're not as big of an a-hole as he was. So it's just a beautiful story, man. Shout out to James Gunn for bringing
what
these
an
characters.
insane movie, an insane story.
I love these characters. They're
so good.
Maybe my favorite in the MCU, I'd say so. And all their stories are beautiful, but Rockets is the one that stands out that, just hit me at the right time. And it's inspirational, and I want to, follow his example.
So there must be something with raccoons for this pick, because I was this close to picking Sly Cooper for this. Here's why I'm actually going to pick Bentley, who is
the hippo, right?
He is the turtle. Yeah. Here's why. Let me explain. Sly Cooper, it's my favorite game. Sly 2 is my favorite game, but it's also my favorite series ever. Sly 1, 2, 3, and Thieves in Time. Sly 2 is my favorite game, but I just love Sly as a character. He's super fun. I love the games. I love the mechanics with him. He's the main character, especially in 1. But then when you get to 2, Murray and Bentley also become playable. Same thing with 3 but in 3 there's a lot more characters playable, and then in 4 his ancestors are playable. In 2 is the meat I want to get into 2. So in the first game it's only Sly. You played the first game.
I played a fair bit of it, and it annoyed me too much, and
Okay, that's fair, because the first game is very different. You have Bentley just sitting back kind of telling you what to do. And why is because he's too scared to go out in the field. So in the second game, he goes out in the field, and for the first half of the game, he's super scared in the field. Like you're out in the field as Bentley, and you got the guys in your ear telling you, "Hey, it's all right, you got this." I remember the first mission you play him in, you're in a nightclub, and you got to put bombs around everywhere to explode the place, and he is just freaking out. He has no idea what to do, and they're like calming him. So you go from a guy that was too scared to get out in the field to now needing to get out in the field reluctantly to help his team out. So he does it reluctantly. You go through about 2, worlds in the game, and he becomes a little bit more confident in himself. So he's liking it. He's liking it being out in the field with the guys. He gets not a little too confident, but what happens is the other 2 guys get captured. Sly and Murray get captured, and they're being basically tortured and held and being hypnotized and just being like experiments ran on them and stuff. So what happens is Bentley is left on his own, and it's a very fun cutscene, because what happens is he's never driven their van before. So now he's like, I'm alone. It's up to me to rescue him. And he's like, the worst part is I got to learn how to drive stick shift. So he has to go rescue them. This is the coolest, in my opinion, this is probably the coolest part of the entire series. You pick up in Prague, and the main boss in this world is the Contessa, and she's a giant spider, and this world it's dark. There's werewolves everywhere. There's like vultures everywhere. It's like scary. It's creepy music. There's like spirits of like these dogs everywhere. You got to fight, and you're Bentley, and he is just so small compared to everybody else. And I remember when it opens up, you're just him sitting alone at the table, when previously it was always the 3 of you. But this is the first time ever it's just him. And you literally cannot progress in the game unless you go save them. So now he has to go save them. Long story short, he saves them, whatever. They get everyone back together. They're better than ever. You get to the end of the game. You're fighting the final boss. Murray is holding up the mouth. Bentley got to squeeze into the mouth because he's a small turtle and he's good with like computers. He hacks the final boss because it's like part machine. He hacks it. He beats it. But at the end, Murray wasn't strong enough, and he lets go, and the mouth closes in on Bentley and paralyzes him. So what happens is he becomes paralyzed. He can't walk. You think he dies. So anyways, Murray picks him up. Murray failed. Bentley failed. Sly failed because he was captured by the police. So the end of the second game is like the end of Infinity War. Everything goes wrong. Everything just goes wrong. The whole game, you're progressing. Things are going right. Bentley's doing his thing. And at the end, everything goes wrong. And I'm getting somewhere. So at the end, he becomes paralyzed. So you pick up with the third game. In the third game, Sly breaks out of prison. Bentley is in a wheelchair because he's paralyzed. And Murray went off to like be on his own, find like a self-discovery type of thing. He's not even in the picture. So you start the third game with everything just broken. So now the theme of the third game is you have to mend your relationship with Murray because he let you down, but you have to basically say, I'm okay with being paralyzed because I did it for the team. So because he's so smart, he makes his wheelchair this insane gadget that has rockets on it, all of his stuff. So now, even though he's paralyzed, he's better than ever. So what happens in the third game is this is a very deep story for these games. So what happens in the third game is he's in a wheelchair. So now he's looking around. He sees Murray super strong. He sees Sly. He can do anything. Bentley was creating a persona of himself online that wasn't paralyzed, and he met this girl. Her name is Penelope. They end up getting together in the game, and when they both get together, it turns out they both were like creating these personas online, but then when they get together, they're not what they thought they were. And he's like, "Oh, you'd probably like them more. You'd probably like them more because they're not paralyzed." And basically, the point is, he can't do what they can do, but they can't do what he can do. So the third game is all of them finding their strong suits, not trying to be each other, but finding their own, what they do best, finding their own thing. So then he becomes so confident in the third game that at the very end of the game, Sly goes in to fight the final boss, and then Murray and Bentley are sitting back out, and Bentley has this like self-reflection moment. He's like, it's a very like, so it's like one of the most emotional parts of the entire series. He's like, are we really doing this for somebody else's problems? Like, this is Sly's family, this is all his problems, and we're being dragged into it. And Murray's like, Sly would do the same thing for us. And he's like, you know what? Even though we're all different, they all met at an orphanage, they're all like completely different people, different mindsets, different moves, sets in the game is what I'm trying to refer to, mechanics and whatever, different play styles. They're just a family. And when they come together and work together, the teamwork and the play style in that game is like unlike any game because of the dynamics between the characters. So that's kind of in short across 3 games right there, the arc that his character takes and how great his character is.
Hearing that actually makes me want to like play through the whole series, because I played some of 1, quit it, and then I played a little bit of 2, and then for some reason just stopped playing it. Not really for any specific reason, but like I want to at least play 2 and 3. But I might try 1 again and just follow.
You would really, really like 3 because it's probably the strongest, but you can't appreciate any of it without playing 2. 2 is where it's at. You would like 2 a lot.
Huh.
In my opinion, it's my favorite. I think it's the best.
All right, so my number 1 pick shouldn't be a surprise, and the fact that you never guessed it, I don't know. I think you're starting to slip in your old age. Peter Parker, are you kidding me? I don't think this will ever be topped. I don't think there will be a character alive in fictional space existing as a character until the Earth inevitably blows up because of climate change, that there will ever be a character I relate to more than Peter Parker. It started when I was a kid. I liked Batman, I liked Hulk. I couldn't relate to any of these guys. I couldn't relate to Wolverine. I couldn't really relate to Rogue. Maybe a little because she was like an outcast. There were no superheroes that like I identified with. And then I saw Spider-Man 1 from 2002, that first Raimi movie. And I see a superhero who's a kid, who doesn't fit in, is a dork, and gets picked on. That changed the trajectory of my entire life. I didn't know that was possible. And then following his story, he grew up and I was still a kid, so I couldn't relate to him, again for a while. And then, I saw the Amazing Spider-Man 1 when I was a young adult. I was in college back when I went to college, and I was growing, I was finally past my awkward phase. I was handsome, I was tall, I was scrawny, but I was still an outcast. I still felt like isolated from people. So, I really related with Andrew's story. And then
That's a perfect description of Andrew's.
In the Amazing Spider-Man 2, his story really resonated with me in a few ways. And then, and then he's played by Tom Holland in Civil War. And, he has a small part in that movie. So, that was I liked him, but there was no emotional connection there. And then Homecoming, his whole thing about like feeling like he doesn't measure up to other heroes. You know, I was older, I was in the workforce and stuff and all that, and you know, I was moving up in the world, and you know, I still had that feeling of insecurity, inferiority. Then even in Into the Spider-Verse, you know, this is a Peter who's basically lost hope. You know, he's just a sad sack who eats pizza and cries in the bathtub, you know, and watches documentaries about seahorses because they have lifelong partners, and he messed up his relationship, and that makes him sad. Underrated moment, in my opinion. Like it's said kind of like a joke, but it's actually sad. And then, you know, so I resonated with him in that. And then in the first Insomniac game, his story, like every version of Peter has something that is just where I am in my life, you know, how I'm feeling. Except Spider-Man 2, kind of. I'll talk about my issues with that game on another episode, but
we'll get to it.
Yeah.
No, we'll get to it.
And then, you know, No Way Home. Are you freaking kidding me? Oh my God. You know, and then even, you know, from the few comics I've read, like Peter, at his core, he is somebody who, I don't know if I want to say he can't be happy, because I feel like that part of him's kind of been glorified among some fans. Like, oh, he needs to be sad all the time. Like, what? That's really masochistic. What are you talking about? But like, he's somebody who can never totally live the life he wants to live, because, you know, his Uncle Ben told him, with great power, there must also come great responsibility. Uncle Ben's an inspiration to me too, but he inspired Peter, who in turn inspires me. And, you know, I have so many moments where, you know, I feel the need to do something for somebody, you know, whether it's like, you know, spending a good amount of money to, you know, buy one of my loved ones a present. Would it be more convenient to buy them something cheaper? Yeah. But I feel the need to just spoil them and let them know I appreciate them. So I go all out. You know, sometimes, you know, sometimes, you know, you just want to stay home all day and be by yourself. But it's like, I haven't, you know, spent time with friends in a while. Let me do that. Or, you know, whether it's like stuff at work or whatever, you know. And I even feel like, I don't think people think about it this way, but I think that also applies to you. Like, if you feel like there's something you can do for yourself and you have the power to do it and you don't do it, then you have no integrity, because you're basically saying you're not important to yourself. You know, so like, you know, that aspect of him is just more relatable as I get older, unfortunately. I'm going to watch a Spider-Man movie one day when I'm like married and stuff, and it's just going to be like, my God. And then the other aspect is that, you know, Spider-Man's always cracking jokes. You know, he's always cracking jokes when he's suffering, you know, because he's somebody who is like, I need to laugh through my pain or it's going to kill me. And, you know, I do that almost to a fault. Like, I can't, even if I'm expressing serious emotions, I have to do it kind of like in a tongue-in-cheek way, because that's just a flaw that I have, you know, and it's improving slowly. Everything's a journey. But like, you know, I just don't, you know, like, it's that meme, he's literally me. But like, you know, even a little more than Cloud Strife, and way more than, you know, all these other characters, as much as I resonate with them, Peter's just always that guy who always has something new to teach me at that point in my life. He always has some new way to inspire me. You know, I could look at his stories and, you know, just feel like there's a lot I could learn from, you know. And he just, you know, in some of the comics, he's an adult and he's married to MJ and he has a daughter and stuff. And freaking Across the Spider-Verse, he's back with Mary Jane and he has a daughter. And in Into the Spider-Verse, he said they broke up because he didn't want kids and she did. So like, you know, it's just like, there's always, like, I'm always going to be able to grow up with this character, my favorite character.
Yeah, there's so many aspects of him.
And, you know, it's just a beautiful thing that I can always look forward to. You know, like Harry Osborn said in Spider-Man 2, I have nothing except for Spider-Man, or something like that. So like, you know, like, even if my life sucks, I still have these characters, and more importantly, I still have Peter Parker, who's in my shoes and is, you know, that, you know, like a friend with his arm around me. Like, I've been where you've been, man, but look at where I am now, and it gets better, dude. So everybody remember that. Even, it's hard to believe it. I'm not entirely buying that right now, but I've seen evidence of that time and time again. It gets better. So
You left out one very important aspect of,
oh no.
and it's what is my number one on my list, and that's symbiote Peter. And the reason being is because, like, I could say everything you just said. Now let's think about symbiote Peter. The symbiote represents instant gratification at the expense of your long-term happiness. And it could be, the symbiote represents superficial. What's superficial versus what is, real. So I like Spider-Man 2 when you think about the aspect of the symbiote. I like Spectacular Spider-Man. I hinted to it earlier with the aspect of the symbiote spider in that. I grew up with the Christopher Barnes Spider-Man from Spider-Man the Animated Series. One of my favorite iterations. I love that. And then you just take everything you just said about Peter, and now you introduce the symbiote. Everything you just said about Peter, now take that and you take it and you just ruin it. That's what I like about symbiote Peter. And it's the Anakin effect. It's the dark side. The symbiote is the dark side. It corrupts. So you think about Anakin. There's light side, and then he starts to get corrupted by the dark side, and we see what he becomes. Think about symbiote Peter. The symbiote has taken over so many people, but then with Peter, you see it take him over, and it hurts different because Peter. You know how his character is, everything you just said. Now the symbiote takes over, and I love Spider-Man 3, the movie, Sam Raimi. I love how they do the symbiote in it. He smacks MJ. You know what I mean? Like, he's going crazy. That opens his eyes, and you really see how it ruins the character of Peter on purpose. It literally, like, people are like, "Oh, that's weird." No, it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be ruining his character. And then you see the real struggle it takes for him to get this off him. And if you take this as an analogy for, things that you deal with that cause you to struggle or to keep you down, and then to part with it is not easy. And you see him, how hard it is for him to get the symbiote off of him. I love the struggle, and I love that Peter and what he has truly on the inside is enough to get him to part with the symbiote. Not through his, super strength as being Spider-Man, but through his heart is what leads him to say, I can't be like this. So then he separates from it. So I think the symbiote Peter arc, and I love the comics. I love Secret Wars where it was first introduced, and then what they did in the later stories with the symbiote. I love the symbiote Peter arc. Anything that has symbiote Peter in it is my favorite. It's my favorite costume in all of comics. My favorite comic book character, is up there with the Flash Batman is Peter, but specifically symbiote Peter. It is such a nuanced version of the character, and almost every iteration of the symbiote, if symbiote Peter, is a little different because it's just a very nuanced version of the Peter character. So I could just say everything you just said and then add on the symbiote Peter aspect of it. What are your thoughts on symbiote Peter?
I mean, unfortunately, it's been way overdone. But I mean, it's still impactful when they do it. Like, it's still like,
I think if they do it right, it's so good.
It's just like, I think my favorite is Spectacular Spider-Man because like, it's accurate to the comics for one thing, and Spider-Man 2, the game, did this too. Where, like, from what I know, I don't know if it necessarily like negatively affected his personality in the early comics, but like, he didn't like the fact that it would like control his body while he was asleep. And like Spectacular Spider-Man did that. Spider-Man 2, the game, did the same thing. And like, I love how in Spectacular, the way he gets free of the symbiote is like, he's thinking about like his loved ones and stuff. And then who's the last person he thinks about? Uncle Ben.
Yeah.
And then, Uncle Ben's memory
So
is
good.
what gives him the mental strength to release himself from the symbiote,
And if you use that as an analogy, that could apply to any struggle that you have. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I love that line in the Spider-Man 2 game where he says, I need this suit. It makes me a better Spider-Man.
Yes, that's I forgot to say that. That's my favorite. You're talking about Spider-Man 2, the game. He's I need the suit. It makes me a better Spider-Man. You could see it, like, Peter, and then you can see it corrupting his mind. And I love how they have Miles in Spider-Man 2 because Miles is us. Miles is saying, "What are you doing?" You know, he's our voice in that game.
Yeah, I like, you know, like, because sometimes we tend to think that like what makes us great isn't what's inside of us, but like some
Yeah.
outside thing. Like,
Yeah.
I need more money, I need more cars, I need better clothes, I need to lose weight, I need a haircut, I need, you know, to start working out, and those things can have a positive effect on you, but like that shouldn't, like, it's all about this. Like, if what's inside of you is off balance and is, you know, ruined and or tainted, then, you know, so like, you know, like Peter, you know, that's the other thing about him is like he always beats himself up. Like he tries so hard, you know, like Cloud Strife. He tries so hard to be the best he can be, and he never feels like it's good enough. He never feels like, you know, he can be freaking proud of himself for anything. And like like that line echoes like he was like trying himself to be a better Spider-Man and couldn't. So it's like, well, if I don't have the ability to do this thing, I have it now because of this outside thing. You know, and that's an unfortunate thing. You know, I feel that way a lot, you know. Like I think about like moments in my life where like if I would have been more assertive, you know, braver, bolder, more self-aware, I could have, you know, prevented this thing. You know, like maybe this thing wouldn't have turned into a negative.
We're going to have a whole episode on Spider-Man 2 because honestly, I love how Harry got it first and it helped him with his disease. And then Peter got onto it and the symbiote loved Peter because of his abilities. So then Peter in turn ended up loving the symbiote. So Peter needed the symbiote and it was corrupting him. And then Harry was like, wow, you took this from me. And Peter was like, well, I'm better with it.
Well, I don't think we've ever seen he corrupted the symbiote, kind of. Because when Harry had it, it was just a thing, you know, but then Peter got it, and then Harry got it back from Peter, and that's when he became, you know, the big monster, Venom.
Yeah.
You know.
But I don't think that would have happened without Peter getting it. So
yeah, like Peter's negativity rubbed off on the suit, I think, and shaped it.
Not just his negativity, but the power behind it. Because the symbiote was learning. You know what I mean? The symbiote's never seen anything like that, and it's sentient. So when it got on Peter and was like, we can kind of take over now. Then when it got back to Harry, it really made Harry a victim, and it was because of Peter. So Peter made it even worse for Harry. It was honestly a very nuanced game, and I think underrated. But I love that aspect of Peter the symbiote.
Yeah, my problems with the game are more in execution of certain things, but like what they were trying to do, I still really enjoyed the game. Like it's not like I beat it and I was like, that sucked. I was just like, I'm kind of disappointed, but I mean, I still like this and this.
Yeah.
You know, like if it has Peter in it, and I mean, I can't hate something. The only piece of Spider-Man media that I had no interest in was the Avengers DLC for the Avengers game.
It was
like
there
the
was
only
no
Spider-Man
story.
thing. I like saw the trailer and I was like, I'm good.
There was no story. There was nothing. I played as him. There was nothing. It was pointless. So, all right. That was it was a lot of fun. It's so funny how we both had Peter Parker as our number one.
I mean, dude, you
have to.
That was why Stan Lee created him, so you could have a superhero who like everybody felt like they could identify with.
Yeah, what a great job. So, I ranted a lot about a lot of different things in this entire episode. So I'm done. You can take it from here. I'm done. Thank you for having me on, Tony.
That's always fun. Yeah, those are just a few. Like if we listed every character that inspired us, there'd be a lot. You know, there were like a few that I didn't have that I do really like you mentioned Ian Clementine from the Walking Dead games. I mean, of course, dude. Freaking Mr. Miyagi, of course.
Yeah.
You know, Yoda's an inspiration. You know, Luke Skywalker is an inspiration in my mind, even in The Last Jedi, but I guess I totally get why some people wouldn't feel that way about that version of him, but I, as somebody who just really likes that kind of storytelling, it hit me. But, you know, so let us know if you're watching on YouTube, what are some fictional characters you identify with, you know, that inspire you, you know, for any reasons, you know, they could be really serious or just, you know, fun and memey. That's all good. I'd probably, if I picked the Mimi one, it'd probably be Chris Redfield from Resident Evil because his biceps are.
Yeah.
I want to start, curling some weight every time I see him. I'm like, I've been slacking, man. But yeah, it was fun. I was admittedly a bit worried about because I think the only personal episode we've done was the one about mental health, from what I remember.
Which we're coming up on a year.
Yeah. So I mean, I feel like it's important every now and then to, again, I'm learning from Peter. I have the power to, create something that even just one person might find helpful, might identify with, and if you can share that with the world and you have the power to do so, you kind of got the responsibility to do it, bro. It's not like you have to.
That's such a good. That's so good.
Yeah, it's so universal. But
let's just leave it with that. That's perfect.
Yeah, so go out there and use your power responsibly, and if you don't feel like you can, find some inspiration, whether it's through art or through the people in your lives or both, anything. But you owe it to yourself to do that. So